example of what I've already told people before, why people should come to PulseChain. People need to listen very carefully because I'm not fudding PulseChain. We just have to have the right narrative, right?
Agree.
So if you look at Matic, you'll find that it was a side chain that's faster, but not necessarily more trustless than Ethereum. Actually, the exact opposite. For the longest time, their official bridge, had admin keys, and they didn't unless you looked, you didn't see that. Like they hid that fact from the community, and then somebody's like, "Well, wait a minute. Of course they have admin keys, but they also had the ability with their keys for the team themselves to just drain all the money, right? Which is like, well, you don't need that kind of admin key. That's not the type of admin key. It's okay to have admin keys in certain things, but not that type, right? And they hid that from the community for the longest time. So then there was some other weird stuff that was going on when people were donating for, they had like a big fundraiser they were trying to do for, to save people from COVID in India. And then all of a sudden, they had a huge, giant, multi-million-dollar marketing budget, and there was no money going towards the thing that they raised the money for. And it was like, well, okay, that's kind of shady. And there's just weird, bad stuff going on. And they launched empty. Mm-hmm. Now, launching an empty chain with the narrative of, hey, we're here to relieve pressure off of your chain, doesn't work the way people think. You can't just be cheaper and faster and then have no liquidity pools. Mm-hmm. Because what ends up happening is your liquidity pools, as people bridge things in, your liquidity pools are so damn thin that the slippage or the price impact that you face on those liquidity pools just overrides any gas savings that you had. Because you go and you do $100 purchase and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, I had, 20% slippage because that liquidity pool is so thin. Okay. So then you're like, well, I might as well have just stayed on ETH because there's no tokens over here. Okay. And then there's arbitrage, and the people who make all the money on that chain are the ARB bots that the smart devs have built. So it's literally, I'm not saying it's a scam to launch an empty chain, but when you launch an empty chain, it has its own problems. It has cheaper gas usually, but more slippage.
It doesn't have the Lindy effect that you were talking about earlier at the beginning of the stream, and that's the inherent paradigm. Is the Lindy effect of having the longest tail is very, very, very important.
Yeah, all the economic value normally always flows right back to the thing that's been around the longest. Mm-hmm. All right. So then what do? Well, then you compare that to how PulseChain is launching. Now, PulseChain's been delayed for a really long time. And we can all be frustrated and say, we wish we had updates. Richard, what's going on? And he tells us, oh, I'm not telling you. Okay, I'll just.
I don't care. I don't want updates. I don't want any more updates.
What it's given us is an opportunity to build a lot of things that will be available immediately when the chain goes live. Mm-hmm. You didn't find that on Matic Chain or Phantom Chain or Avalanche Chain or any of these other chains that exist. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to have 180 protocols,
a full ecosystem
within the first month, full stock liquidity pools ready to go, so people can come and play. And that's not something that's ever been seen before. Mm-hmm. And if people like to play with their tokens that they already get copied over, now we know how that normally goes. A lot of those are just going to dump down and go to zero. Okay, cool, because that's just going to pump pulse anyway when people do that. But if they want to play around with their coins, come on over and play. Try to get some value out if you want, okay? Extract value. But you'll probably get really excited about all the things that are surrounding you on the chain, and you'll stick around. So I am extremely bullish on PulseChain because it is still doing something that's never been done before. Even if you compare it to ETH Fair and ETHW, well, those launched with clones of everything, and there are a handful of protocols building over on those chains, but it's not a full, complete ecosystem like we have from the hexagons that are building stuff.